In today's episode of the CDG BizCast, we are going to discuss change-rous decisions. What I mean by that is decisions that businesses make that cost them business. In simplest terms, bad decisions that cost them so much business that even their regulars quit patronizing them. Joining us today is our wonderful BizCast consumer panel. Please welcome Dana, Justin, Lauren, and Sarah. And we are going to discuss some examples that everybody else could learn from of big mistakes made by larger corporations and even some small businesses. Lauren, I'm going to start with you. Please tell me of a recent experience that you have had with a business that you've been a patron of for many years, and then they just downright upset you, or they did something disappointing that you just can't return to them anymore.
Well, what's it called? I don't know with this house, but basically, I don't know if is this about mid-price changes as well, randomly.
Yes, that any type of change.
Basically, when I was on EE broadband, I still have broadband with them, but now it's mobile broadband because the other one was phased out, and I can't get where I am fibre, where my flat is at. Because of how high up it is, etc. And but when I was on the old broadband, they said, oh, it'll be a fixed price for 2 years or whatever, 24 months or something like that. But then they would randomly change a price every couple of months, and I would think maybe I just misread that it said there was no price changes, but I was certain there was no price changes, but they were constantly price changing it, which always confused me when, you shouldn't, if you say there's no price changes, you shouldn't do that. But I didn't realize that's a legal issue.
It is. It's false advertising. If they say that there's no price changes and then they just randomly raise your rates, yeah, they're committing false advertising. Now,
it always confused me. Yeah, they'd often raise it by a couple pence, or sometimes it'll be like £1, £1 something. And yeah, it always confused me because I always thought, oh, maybe I missaw things, but I'm sure I didn't. And I'm sure it said fixed price.
The best thing to do is when you sign up for any type of service, look at your agreement or your contract that you have with them and look for the fine print. The only way that they can do this legally is if they have a line in your contract that says price is subject to change. It might say that the fixed price is only applicable to certain areas of the service, but other areas could still go up in price. And the reason why so many companies get away with this is because the majority of customers do not read what they're signing. It's always important to read everything you sign up for line by line to make sure that you know what you're getting into, because regardless if you read it or not, you're still legally bound by those terms regardless.
Yeah, luckily I've not had that, even though it's the same company, my mobile broadband. Luckily I've not had that problem and it's stayed at a fixed price. But yeah, when I had the other broadband, it was always changing, even though they said it was a fixed price.
So how did you respond to this change, to this abrupt change that you just were not expecting? What was your response?
Well, I didn't do much because I was, at first I thought it was me, and then because I left it so long, there was no point in me even doing much about what I felt like that I wouldn't be able to do much about it anyway. I guess I wasn't confident enough to take it further.
What I personally would have done was, first, I would have left a review saying that I was not satisfied with this change.
If it happened now, I would definitely 100% do that. But back then, I just didn't think to say anything about it, or more I probably just couldn't be bothered with the hassle. But yeah, definitely now, if it happened, I would definitely speak up.
Something similar happened with an electric company that my household was using since 2011. They were very cheap at the time of signing up, but as the years went by, the rates kept increasing and increasing and increasing to the point till we just dropped them altogether and went to another company. It was a very similar situation, but sadly, companies can legally do this, especially if it specifies in your agreement with them that the prices are subject to change. It's not always a positive change, but sadly the only thing we can do to fight it is just to stop giving them our business and go to one of their competitors.
Yeah, though I got a new mattress off DFS, and I don't know if they do it in the States, but they do it in the UK. And basically they did it on finance, and the company they did it through said that there's no VAT. Basically, just pay what you're buying. But if you miss a payment, they'll like whack up. They'll put on a like £20 fee, and then if you don't pay it within like 2 days, they'll whack on another £20 fee. And it's crazy when they said there's no extra charges at first, but obviously I'm guessing that probably shows in the fine print for them
Right.
to be able to do that.
Right. And we're going to have a whole episode later on discussing false advertising or misleading advertising. And your story sounds great for that future episode.
Yeah.
But yes, I do see why you're upset with your broadband company.
Luckily, since I've had mobile broadband, I've not had the issue. It's just stayed at one price. But yeah, that was when I was with the old broadband that they were selling.
I understand the feeling that some consumers feel powerless because they don't really have the power to change the price. You do have the power to give your dollars to somebody else if you feel that that company is not treating you well. It's just sad that companies make these abrupt changes thinking that us consumers aren't paying attention, and then that will just simply give in because we can't really do anything about it. Oh yes, we can do a lot about it. We can put them out of business by giving our money to other competitors. Your story was a great example. You had a lot to say, and I'm sorry that that happened to you, but it is a lesson learned, right?
Yeah, definitely. You definitely do learn from it.
So who would like to share their story next?
One thing that really has upset me is that I have a dairy allergy, and I am very upset with McDonald's Corporation for reformulating their filet of fish sandwich, which did not have milk as an ingredient in the 90s, to now have milk as an ingredient these days, and has cost them money from my pocket because that was my favorite item on their menu, and I'm no longer able to eat it because I'm allergic to an ingredient they now include.
Wow, I actually was not aware of that because I know people who enjoy the McDonald's fish sandwich, but I didn't know that they reformulated their breading that they put on it. That can be a very impactful change for people who have allergies like you do. I have allergies myself, but not to milk. I just don't think it's right that they can do that and then not be upfront about what they're changing. I've always believed that there should be some kind of law saying that if you're going to tweak your recipes and it might have something that could put your customer at a health risk if they were to buy your food product, they need to mention it in the ad that it now includes allergens. Yes, they do mention it on the menu boards. They do mention if certain products have allergens, but in advertising, they don't say a thing, and in fact, they could easily slip this past everybody. You would end up finding out on your own, and that is not good at all, because that at that point, they are putting the almighty dollar ahead of people's concern.
But they need to be careful because they could get sued if someone dies from an allergy.
Yeah.
Some allergies can kill people.
That's true.
So,
That's
yeah.
very true. That's more
I
than
almost
true.
lost my baby cousin to a sesame allergy that they did not notate. There was a person who used bread in a toaster 5 years ago. She was on a mission trip with her church, and she has a sesame allergy. And she was gluten-free, and she put her bread in the toaster. Didn't realize that the person before her had a sesame seed piece of bread in the toaster. The oils from a single layer sesame seed on the bottom of the toaster went up onto her bread, and she landed into the ER out in New Mexico or in New Jersey.
That's
Crazy what
horrible.
could happen.
That's just
Scary.
downright sickening. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Dana.
I'm
That's
glad she's okay, the baby.
She's gonna be 21 this coming November. She just turned
Oh,
20.
wow.
She's doing great. But that actually leads me to a question for Justin. What dairy products do consumers need to look out for if they have a dairy allergy?
One of the big ones that some people without dairy allergies or who are new to it might not be aware of is something called whey protein, and it's in a lot of stuff. In fact, if you actually look for whey protein at the grocery store, you would be amazed at what you cannot eat if you have a dairy allergy and that is present in the food.
And some people don't realise you can get vegan whey proteins, because I've used them before. Someone tried to say, even though I eat non-dairy, they tried saying, oh, well, you have whey protein that has dairy, and not all of it does. And so people need to check the labels of that, definitely.
Shouldn't it specify if it's vegan whey protein?
It's supposed to, and in fact, it's illegal for not to. But 99.99% of all whey proteins are actually dairy-based, and the ones that aren't will clearly listed in the ingredients label. In fact, if you were to go to your average frozen section of a grocery store and look at the TV dinners, especially the breakfast products, you will find that there are almost zero options for someone with a dairy allergy.
Justin, what was your response to McDonald's changing their fish sandwich recipe? How did you personally respond, in addition to just quit patronizing them?
I just stopped going there. Eventually, they're going to notice that I'm no longer going there. And something that makes me angry about Stouffer's in particular is that Stouffer's reformulated their meatloaf, which was one of my favorites, to now contain whey protein, along with sub-proteins, caseinite and caseinite. That's CASEINITES and CASEINATES are also items you have to watch out for in items that are listed with milk allergy, because those are actually portions of the protein that are left over after the liquid has been cooked out of the milk.
Wow. So Stouffer's is another brand, specifically their meatloaf, that you do not buy anymore due to the allergens.
Correct. And I'm not even able to have the frozen Eggos anymore because those contain whey protein, believe it or not.
Almost everything does, but the fact that these companies made these changes to their recipes to include these particularly potent allergens is more than a legitimate reason to quit buying these brands and to quit patronizing their stores. I find it incredibly unethical that companies would just do this without being upfront about it. I know that there's no law requiring them to be upfront about these changes, but it's still morally and ethically you need to be upfront about this, because if you're not, you're just showing that you care more about making a buck, and you're already a multi-million-dollar corporation to begin with, than you do about your customer base. Companies should never put profit over the interests of their customers. That's how you get put out of business, the lack of morals. Yeah, Justin, that was a great example. Who would like to go next and share their story? Sarah?
Yeah, I'm going to say about electrical warranty I took out a few years ago on a product. It was a 3-year warranty, and I expected to have the 3 years. It turns out I only had 2 years, so I paid for 3 and only had 2. Because they said the first year was already included. I said, no, I actually paid for 3 years. So I should get 4 years altogether, including the 1 year that comes with the electrical product. So I fought with them. I got nowhere whatsoever. So that is misrepresentation, because obviously I have physically paid for 3 years. They're advertising you can have 3 years for a warranty on an electrical product, but in fact it's only worth 2 years, but I've paid for 3. To me that is misrepresentation, because I've actually paid for 3 years, because it's saying pay for 3 extra years warranty, but I'm actually only having 2.
That's actually more of a story that you could save when we do our false advertising episode. Have you ever come across a brand or company that you've been a regular customer of, maybe a month, maybe a few months, less than a year, who made such a drastic change to their product or service that you just quit patronizing them altogether?
BT are rip-off merchants here in the UK. BT, broadband and telephone, absolutely atrocious. They drop their they change their contracts the drop of a hat, and it goes up and up. They say, Lauren was saying earlier about they change the prices on the contract. They actually do. So it's like you've got to pay a certain amount a month for this service, and it's supposed to be for, say, you've taken out an 18-month contract. Well, yeah, you expect it to go up a little bit, but you don't expect it to go up like £20-30 per month till you end up paying nearly 300 quid. I mean, that's not acceptable.
I dodge BT at all costs because of that.
Yeah, we do. We're not with them. We're with Shell now.
Wow, that's terrible.
I had a bit of trouble with Shell, though, to be honest, but I sorted that out.
Price gouging is one of the most unethical practices that any business can participate in. And it sounds like that when it comes to broadband services over in the United Kingdom, there seems to be an ethics issue. It seems like their business model just revolves around telling you one thing and then changing their terms when you don't expect it. Just an abrupt change in price. And
Yeah.
your story is pretty much the same thing. I see a lot of
Mm.
parallels between your story and what Lauren was talking about, because they both involve companies in the same industry and they're both engaging
Yeah.
in the same practices. I want to make this
Yeah.
statement about price gouging. And to all the business owners out there who are listening to this, I don't care if you're a small business who just got started, you've been in the game for a while, or you're a mega conglomerate. Don't engage in price gouging. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you tell your customer you're going to sell at a certain price, you sell it at that price. Unless you have some sort of disclaimer saying that prices are subject to go up. Don't try to pull a fast one on your customer base and just flip your price. You don't want to give your customers a rude awakening when they see that a product that they have been purchasing from you for so long has skyrocketed in price that they can no longer purchase it. Because guess what? They're going to be upset. They're going to fire you and they're going to go to one of your competitors. They will be getting all the money instead. It's very unethical, and personally, I view that as a scam. Don't raise your prices on your products and surprise your customers. Don't engage in price gouging. It's unethical, it's also illegal, and it's an easy way to gain distrust among your customers. It's an easy way to destroy your business. It's basically business suicide.
So I personally have been a longtime Coca-Cola supporter, and one of my favorite sodas that they put out, specifically Coca-Cola, was the orange vanilla flavor. Now, I know there's certain places that you can go with the free machines, the free what was it, free flowing
The
machines,
freestyle?
where yes, thank you, the freestyle machines. I forgot what they were called. You could buy, the drink, and then you go over there and you can get the cherry vanilla or the orange vanilla or whatever flavor that you wanted. Well, that doesn't always happen when you're in the store. What I personally miss going to the store and picking up a 6-pack of the orange vanilla Coca-Colas. To me, they tasted just like an orange creamsicle. One of my favorite desserts, by the way. And I was very disappointed when I stopped being able to find my orange vanilla, well, my personal favorite. So that's one thing that I was very disappointed in. They also started to do the different limited edition flavors. Well, I had no problem with the limited edition flavors, except the fact that they were not continuing with the fan favorites. And I've noticed Pepsi does a very similar thing with getting rid of a fan favorite, the Sierra Mist, which was the competition to Coca-Cola Company's Sprite. They have now put out Starry. The Starry soda. I myself am not a Pepsi product person, and that's my own personal thing. I don't really care for Sprite, Sierra Mist. I'm not really that type of person, but I have noticed that people are just angry in general about the switch from Sierra Mist to Starry. So I found that was a very, very bad move on Pepsi's end.
I agree with you 100%. You've taken the words right out of my mouth. Everything that you said about Pepsi and Starry is what I was going to discuss. And in fact, let me elaborate on a few key points about Pepsi's introduction of Starry to the market. For one thing, there's a YouTube video where somebody was comparing the ingredients between Starry and Sierra Mist. They are nearly identical except for one major change. Sierra Mist uses real sugar. Starry uses high fructose corn syrup. And PepsiCo has said, or that Starry's recipe is completely different from that of Sierra Mist. The reason why PepsiCo introduced Starry was due to the fact that Sierra Mist only had 1% of the market share. It was losing to Sprite majorly, and I'd say that's PepsiCo's fault because Sierra Mist was hard to find to begin with, and they wanted a soda that Gen Z buyers could relate to, hence the hip new logo, the colorful label. You get the idea. That was Pepsi's reasoning behind introducing Starry. And you're right, Dana, a lot of people are angry. Look on their Twitter page, look on their Instagram page. You'll see a lot of angry Sierra Mist loyalists blowing up these pages, demanding that Sierra Mist come back. And in fact, I even saw one comment on their Instagram page where someone said, I guarantee you that Starry, I'm paraphrasing, I guarantee that Starry is going to flop and Sierra Mist is going to be back in no time.
My dad is a huge Sierra Mist fan. He prefers Coke products, but he doesn't like Sprite. He actually likes Sierra Sierra Mist. And you're right, it's so difficult to find Sierra Mist as it is. He was upset with the change.
I saw Sierra Mist in the fountain at Taco Bell last week, and if you go to restaurants that serve Pepsi products, such as Taco Bell, Red Lobster, and Panera Bread, just to name a few, they serve Pepsi products, and chances are they still have Sierra Mist in the fountain. So if you want to get Sierra Mist, you'll want to go now and get it before it eventually gets swapped out with Starry, because that's Pepsi's goal. A lot of people are mad. A lot of people are saying that they won't drink Starry and they won't touch it anymore. Just like your dad, he's not happy about this.
And how often do you even go to those restaurants on a daily basis? If you're going to go grocery shopping and get stuff for the home, you're not going to go to the restaurants.
Nope,
and
that's
get
right.
the fountain drinks. You're going to go to the to ShopRite, Stop and Shop, Walmart, Target, whatever
Right.
stores local to you. Food Lion, doesn't matter where you are. If you have a Pepsi aisle in your sodas, and your soda aisle at the store for me is Stop and Shop and ShopRite are my local here up in New Jersey. And I remember looking at the Pepsi products and I'm like, what is this Starry? I've never heard of this before. Is this something new? Is this because I never knew it was a Pepsi product at first. And when I was working there and I was shopping, I'm like, okay, something's up. I saw Sprite. I saw Starry. I have never seen Sierra Mist there, and I haven't seen it since. And I'm like, okay, something's up. And I didn't like that change. As I said, my dad prefers Sierra Mist over Sprite. And on top of that, my dad is borderline diabetic. You got to remember here, and if any business owner who deals with the food industry is listening to this, please, please, please remember that high fructose corn syrup is sweeter than natural sugar. For those who are diabetic or borderline diabetic, they cannot have high fructose corn syrup.
Very well said, yes. That's why they offer alternatives such as diet and sugar-free sodas.
They're not even that healthy compared to the originals. She's less healthy than the originals.
And a lot of people don't know that, but the companies don't care. They just want to make a buck, even though they're multi-million-dollar corporations.
That's one thing that really makes me angry, is that they may claim a product is new and improved, but quite often the use of artificial sweeteners will make it so that it is unsafe for those who are pre-diabetic, type 1 or type 2, to actually have that product in their rotation in their pantry or their refrigerator.
Exactly.
That is definitely a problem. I mean, the food industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you got to understand that as sad as it is, the honest truth is that corporations are all about making money. They really don't care if you're diabetic. They just want you to buy their products. I mean, it's not just with the food industry, but there's other industries that are harmful too, such as the tobacco industry, the alcohol industry, just to name a few. Going back to our initial topic at hand about Starry's introduction, PepsiCo is losing a good chunk of their customer base who mainly bought Sierra Mist to their competitors, which would be Keurig Dr. Pepper 7-Up and Coca-Cola Sprite. These are the two biggest competitors to Starry and Sierra Mist. And I even saw one picture on Twitter of somebody pouring a can of Starry into a trash can just to show them how upset they were with this change. So PepsiCo made a Change-rous decision. You see the pun I did there, because this is now hurting them. This is going to hurt their bottom line in the end. We don't know how popular Starry's going to be with the Gen Z crowd just because it has a hip looking logo. They are trying their best to compete with Sprite, but is Starry the answer to PepsiCo's problem? And for one thing, the name Starry is not even that good or that catchy to begin with.
We don't have the sodas you have over there. I mean, the only sort of lemonades we have is Sprite, Schweppes. I guess that's just like your Tesco brand, your Asda brand, just the home brands then.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we have Schweppes for ginger ale, but not for any other soda. It's owned by Dr. Pepper.
We just have the lemonade for Schweppes over here.
Oh, we don't have the lemonade here. We just have the ginger ale.
That's lovely. Schweppes lemonade is absolutely lovely.
Time is going to tell whether or not Starry truly is the answer to fighting Coca-Cola Sprite. Right now, it's a head-to-head battle. With Sierra Mist, Sprite was KOing Sierra Mist with one punch, pretty much worldwide. Sprite had the market share. But again, it was PepsiCo's fault. You could say that they hurt themselves by not having Sierra Mist readily available. In fact, I noticed that it disappeared from the shelves at least 2 years ago, long before Starry was even thought of. I might sound like a conspiracy theorist for saying this, but it does sound like that they were trying to purposely kill Sierra Mist so they could get another product to replace it on the shelves, one that they felt would be more powerful. What do you guys think?
Definitely sounds like it's a bit political between different companies, sort of
Oh,
like a
sorry,
war
sorry.
against one another.
The ongoing brand wars between Coca-Cola and Pepsi and their affiliated brands have been going on since before the computer wars between AMD and Intel got started.
And also long before Apple and Android
That's
even were
right.
considered a thing.
Coke and Pepsi are basically Windows versus Mac, or McDonald's versus Burger King, Chevy versus Ford, Kroger versus Walmart, I guess you could say, in terms of
Target,
groceries.
Walmart.
As be Tesco versus Sainsbury, I guess. Who knows what I mean there?
Based on these examples that we've been discussing, you can see the dramatic impact that a major change can have on your customer base. It'll either make you or break you. If the customers embrace it, you can see your revenues go up. If they hate it, you can expect to see low sales every month. And that's just a sad fact of the business life. Now, I want to share some examples that I've noticed recently. The first one I want to talk about is my dentist that I normally go to. In my area, I went to a dentist called Royal Dental. I've been going there for my regular cleanings since 2017, and I've always felt that, for the most part, they were pretty good. There were some times where they were a bit understaffed, but that was due to COVID, so I'm not going to hold that over their heads. But here is what I am upset with them about, and why I've made the decision to never go back to them ever again. So they were a mom and pop shop. They were independently owned, who decided to sell out to Brident, which is a major corporation. Royal Dental is not the first dental chain that they've bought out. They've bought a few others out around Texas and most likely in other states as well. But Royal Dental was local to the Houston area, and they were a mom and pop business, like I said. Why did I make the major decision to quit going there? Because when I went in a few weeks ago from the time of us recording to go get my regularly scheduled teeth cleaning, they informed me that I was not in their system. The entire Royal Dental database of patients was purged by Brident so that they could use Brident's system. Moving over to Brident's system basically kicked everybody out of Royal Dental. Everybody who was a regular with them for years was no longer a patient as of the day Brident bought them out. And here's the cherry on top. They sent me text messages, reminders, asking me to confirm my appointment. They asked to apply Y for yes, to confirm that I'll be showing up on my scheduled appointment. So I did. And my appointment was supposedly confirmed in their computer system. Then everything that I just described to you happened when I went in for my appointment. I was no longer a patient. They kicked me out. Every regular patient of Royal Dental was no longer a patient there, thanks to Brident patient database taking over. You would have thought that they would have been more than overjoyed to find out that they were inheriting a bunch of patients. But no, when the takeover happened, they just gave them all the boot. So they basically just said, we don't want your money now that we've merged. We don't want your money anymore.
But they didn't mind sending you a reminder.
Not one reminder. I wasn't emailed. I didn't get a letter in the mail. They didn't call me. The automated text messaging system actually reassured to me that I was going to be able to go in and have my appointment that day. And then I found out that I was no longer a patient. How unethical is that?
That's disgusting.
That's completely immoral and unethical. My father is actually a dentist. He has a private practice in Somerset, New Jersey, and that just hearing that as a daughter of a dentist, that just ugh. Christian, were you actually in the system as a patient with an appointment scheduled? Or just not even in the system with an appointment at all?
Both, actually. When I walked in, I asked the receptionist at the front desk to look up my appointment. I told him that I had an appointment that day at a specific time. He goes to the computer, types in my name. I don't show up. My appointment's not there, and I'm not in there. Apparently, their automated text messaging system that sends out reminders is still fully functional, but it was not synced up with the current database. So basically what happens is that when companies merge, the company that gets bought out gets dissolved. So Royal Dental basically no longer existed. They were now Brident due to this, and when Royal dissolved, so did their patient database. It made no sense to me at all that they did not migrate or combine the databases of the two when they merged. I just don't get it. It just made me so mad to the point that I will not be returning to Royal Dental, and I will not be patronizing any dental office under the Brident name.
On the contrary, with your situation, when I worked for CVS, I helped out in their pharmacy. They actually bought out the local CVS actually now welcomed. It even said on their door, we welcome Scotch Plains Pharmacy. We welcome Scotch Plains Pharmacy patient. So they actually were able to pull it up in the system. So I don't understand how a major corporation like Bryden wouldn't be able to transfer that over. Like that's just that
It
just
ma-
makes
It's not
me
only
sick.
you as a patient, Christian, that's
It
been
was
let down.
everybody.
Sorry, it's not only you, Christian, as a patient. It's all the other patients that were existing there as well, with all appointments turning up.
Based on what the reception told me, that was it. When I told him that I was a Royal Dental patient, he's like, oh, so that's why I don't see you in the system. And that implies to me that every patient from Royal Dental's database was automatically purged once Bryden took over. Bryden's database and computer system kicked in, and it just wiped everybody else
Overrode it.
out.
That's
Yeah.
crazy because my old doctor's surgery moved to another doctor. It merged into a different doctor's surgery. It used to be called, I can't remember what it was called, but then it moved into Morab surgery and it became part of Morab. But they automatically transferred everyone's data over, and that's what should have happened in that situation. Or they
Same
should have
with
let everyone know.
Same locally with Summit Health. It used to be Summit Medical Group, and they ended up merging with City MD and become Summit Health. And as far as I'm aware, I was never a City MD patient, but I'm a Summit Medical Group patient. That everything was supposed to transfer over when Summit Medical Group became Summit Health. So with that merge, they should have had I honestly can't speak for City MD patients because I was never one of them. I was always a Summit Medical Group patient. But the point here is, like your situation, Lauren, as far as I'm aware, City MD patients and Summit Medical Group patients are able to be pulled up in the Summit Health system. That just irks me.
So-
You.
It irks you. I'm mad just thinking about it because I've been a patient with them for so long, and then for them to just do this to me and every other patient that goes there, I mean, I'm speechless. I'm aghast about that. And
I'm flabbergasted.
it just doesn't make any sense. Did they not want the extra money they could be getting from the patients they were acquiring through
They
this
just probably couldn't be
acquisition?
asked to do the work, to be fair. They're probably too lazy to do the work.
I agree with that. That could be, I mean, that's just
Probably.
speculation, but this lack of work ethic that we have right now is just taking a toll on the businesses.
Because, yeah, when I
I know
mentioned-
that there was a local pharmacy chain to me called Long's Drugs that went out of business, and they sold their entire customer database to Walgreens Corporation. It was completely seamless.
Should always
Went
be
Why
seamless.
can't it be like
transfer.
that? Why
And
couldn't
then
Biden be like that, Justin?
I don't know. I think that's just laziness on the part of Bryden to import the database smoothly like that.
Yes.
And I remember that Iowa Corporation, when they had a pharmacy before they went out of business, sold their pharmacy technician database to CVS before their grocery store company. All 60 stores went out of business.
And wasn't there a situation that you had told me about a while ago of a local retailer, when I think it was Rite Aid, when they had been taken over, the pharmacy technicians and the staff was guaranteed a position if they wanted it?
Walgreens took over approximately 4,600 Rite Aid locations nationally. And every single Rite Aid employee that wanted to stay on in the locations that were going to be staying open with Walgreens automatically were told you will be kept on the payroll.
And I wish
by
that was the
Walgreens
case.
Corporation.
I wish that was the case when Kohl's had taken partnership with Sephora, because I have never worked in the beauty department in Kohl's, but I have friends who did. I have to say did, because there were a lot of people were angry about that, including a couple of my friends who worked at the Watchung Kohl's, because what they had said to me was, well, and multiple people who used to work in beauty said the same thing. Oh yeah, we had to reapply to Sephora. We weren't even guaranteed our positions. One of them was there 20 some odd years in beauty, and she was no longer guaranteed her position with Sephora. She had to reapply to Sephora. She and all the other beauty advisors over at Kohl's just up and left.
That's
Once
terrible.
that was made, they just up and left.
That's terrible.
I've just remembered the DPD delivery service here. Usually, when you track your item, it will tell you which driver it's out with. But sometimes it was saying it was out with a different driver, but it was actually out with another one. For example, it would say Stuart, but you'd have Ashley, or you'd have Stuart instead of Ashley, even though it said Ashley. And I asked the DVD drivers about it, and they said apparently the older drivers have been like wiped off the system because they've not got enough storage. Apparently, they can't be bothered to upgrade their storage. So,
Wow.
like old drivers
Wow.
that have been there longer than the new ones are having to use the new ones' freaking accounts, or the other way around.
It seems like that companies are just having a hard time trying to integrate old over new.
I was gonna sort of still go on about your dentist thing. I can't understand how they haven't seamlessly combined patients' records from one branch to another,
Because my
because
doctors did it
ours
easy.
up the town done it just as easy as pie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get knocked off. We just got, when the new people come in and took over my dentist, seamlessly just moved all the patients and then said, right, well, we've got room for some new ones.
Yeah.
This is how many new ones we can add.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, right, well, we're now full up, so we can't add no more patients. But it was so seamless, you didn't really know that they changed whole company.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't take my doctor.
So with yours, I can't understand how they've suddenly, thousands and thousands of patients are suddenly, oh, well, just goodbye, patient.
It just blows my mind. I was shocked when I went in there that day.
It's like mind-blowing how it can be, in this day and age, how it can be so badly done.
How did you sort it out, Christian? How did you get around it? Were you with the same company still, like the ones that you went into, the ones that cocked up? Did you have to register with a new dentist or something?
They gave me the paperwork to fill out, but I just threw it away because I just decided I'm not going back to them. If they were going to do that to me, I don't trust them anymore. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Point.
I'm still looking for a dentist to
Dad?
this day at the time of us recording. I'm still looking for a good dentist to this day, but I've already made my decision. I will not be returning to Royal, and I will not patronize Bryden and any of their subsidiaries. So,
Yeah, don't
that's,
waste your time or
Done,
money.
yeah.
Yeah, good on you.
And everybody deserves better than that.
Yes.
Everybody deserves better than that. Because if you're a loyal patient or a loyal, consumer of some specific area, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what kind of business you are. If you have a loyal fan base and you have a loyal consumer base, do not, I repeat, do not do what Bryden did to Royal Dental and screw your loyal consumers over like what
'Cause that-
Christian had to deal with.
Yeah.
Do not do that. That is
It-
unethical. That is immoral. That is just plain out wrong.
Detrimental to vulnerable customers, because some customers don't know what to do, or they just won't do anything, and they'll just leave it and they'll get neglected or fall through the net. And it's just, with anything, if that happens with any service, it's not good. You need to do what you're paid to do.
Exactly.
Get paid.
When you alienate your patients like the way they did, when you alienate your customers in general, like what Bryden did, you're basically saying, screw you. We don't care about you. Bring on the money with the new patients. Don't do that. That is how you put yourself out of business. Don't do anything that could harm you and your relationship with your regulars, especially the people that you've had a great relationship with for so many years. Unethical, immoral, and it's backstabbing. Don't do it. Do the right thing. Be upfront. Get your regular customers ready for a major transition if one's coming in. Don't just leave them in the dark and then give them a rude awakening when they're ready to give you their business again. I mean, gosh, I don't really know what else to say about that. I've just been speechless. But
That's one thing that, especially with medical providers, Christian, on that paperwork you threw away, in the age of identity theft, it's a good idea, if you're not going to patronize their services, application forms like that, you should either shred or burn before disposal.
true,
To
you're
protect
right.
your information.
That's a good tip for everybody out there.
I've actually heard of people losing their driver's licenses because of epileptic fraudsters using stolen identities to receive medical care and causing the victim to lose their driver's license.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's a great tip, too. That's a great way to make sure that people don't steal your information. It is a good idea to shred or burn, like you said, or if it's in a kitchen trash can, just let all the food waste destroy the document as well. Let it get covered in spaghetti sauce and stuff like that, or whatever you're throwing away. Now, I do want to discuss my next example of how change can be dangerous. I want to talk about a Tex-Mex fast food chain here in Texas and a few surrounding states that you guys are probably not familiar with because they don't have a presence anywhere except for Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma, I believe. And they certainly don't have any presence in the United Kingdom. I'm talking about Taco Cabana. Now, a lot of people in Texas at one point were huge fans of this chain, and a lot of people patronize it regularly. But sales have been dropping over the years, and they've changed owners quite a few times. The food quality, as people have noticed, is starting to go downhill. It's not as good as it once was, 5 or 10 years ago, or even longer than that. A lot of people are going on to social media, and they're also leaving reviews, usually 1 or 2 star reviews, complaining about how the food quality's changed and how they've gotten rid of several signature menu items. Some of them they got rid of during the pandemic to cut costs, but they just never reintroduced them. And a lot of people are still upset about that. They are also upset over the fact that they have recently switched from Coca-Cola products to Pepsi products. And it seems like that a good chunk of their customer base is used to the Coca-Cola products they regularly serve because they've been with Coca-Cola for pretty much their entire existence. And one thing that I noticed personally about them is that they got rid of the salsa bar. So there used to be a small salsa bar, like an island type bar, off to the side near where the drinks were. And they had red salsas and green salsas and other different flavored salsas. I like that. I like to be able to put some on my food. They don't have that anymore. The bar is sitting there and it's got a sign on it that says salsa bar, but there's nothing there. They just filled it with ice and put decorations in it. So a lot of people are noticing that these changes, while they may look minor in the eyes of the company, the customers are raging about it. They are not happy. They are giving their money to the competitors. And it's a shame that people are even deciding to go to Taco Bell because they're considered to be lower than them. They're considered to be of lower quality food than them. And I have noticed too that whenever I go in there, the place is usually really empty. So all these recipe changes that they've made to where the food tastes different and everything else in between is hurting them. They've went down from 200 restaurants to 100 restaurants, and their presence is quickly shrinking. They had one location in Georgia, which is long gone. They also had a limited presence in Florida, and all those stores are gone now too. As much as I hate to say this, they are digging their own grave because they got rid of everything that was working. The old saying goes, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So here they are trying to fix a lot of stuff that wasn't broken. And what's the end result? Their profits are lower. Sales have actually been in decline since 2019. Between now and then, the company has changed owners. And because of these declining sales, the end result is the chain is shrinking. They are pretty much on their deathbed. If they could just simply revert back to their old style and bring back the menu items that they like, if they could basically just go back to the way they used to be before this ownership change happened, before the pandemic, I guarantee you sales will skyrocket. People will patronize them again. It's just a shame to see that a chain that was once beloved by Texans everywhere is pretty much digging its own grave by making all these unnecessary changes.
That's one thing that I think is actually an interesting decision that was made by Chipotle Corporation during the height of the pandemic when everybody was staying home from the restaurants, either because they could not afford to go there or because of other reasons they were not able to go to Chipotle as often. They decided to post the recipe of their guacamole on their Twitter feed for everybody as transparency, so that even though you may not be able to physically go there, that you could still do that at home as kind of a nod to helping people out.
Yeah, it seems like that what Chipotle was doing is that they were trying to generate buzz around their brand on social media, similar to what Popeyes was doing back in 2019 over the chicken sandwich craze. They were trying to leverage social media to keep interest in the brand because they knew that people weren't going out. They couldn't physically go into the restaurants and eat because of mandates set by the governors. I mean, most states said that restaurants had to be closed for a while, and then when they reopened, there were capacity limits. So how do you keep your customer base engaged when they can't come and patronize you? Use social media, give them something that they're interested in, and if you're really interested in keeping them satisfied, give them something you know that they will be able to partake of themselves through social media. And in this case, it's the guacamole recipe, because Chipotle was showing that they still have a heart. They're not just trying to make a profit. They're saying, if we can keep our customers happy by not making any money and just giving them our recipe, then we're still in good shape. People are still thinking about us, and when the pandemic is over, and it'll be business as usual again. But we don't want our customers to forget about us and forget who we are. We're still going to keep them engaged and try to create some buzz as much as we can to keep them interested. That's how I see their strategy. That's my analysis of their strategy over why they chose to publicly post the recipe to what's supposed to be proprietary.
So I can definitely see why they chose to publicly give the guacamole recipe. I personally have had it. It's one of my personal favorites. I'm a huge guacamole fan. And I've heard that from other people who have had Chipotle that one of their favorite toppings, one of their favorite sauces was a guacamole. One of their favorite side dips, whatever, that was a guacamole. And I could definitely see why that was what they chose to actually put on their webpage because of, or their Twitter feed, because of how popular the item actually is. Now, going back to that Taco Cabana, so the you said they had switched from Coke products to Pepsi products, correct?
That's right.
So I've actually myself have done a blind taste test between regular Coke and regular Pepsi. There's a huge difference in taste. A lot of people may not be able to tell a difference, but even if you don't blind test me, I could definitely tell a difference. And a lot of people can tell a difference between Coke and Pepsi. So I can see where the difference is in terms of taste and why a lot of people just got angry about it. One of my friends is a Pepsi fan. She prefers, Diet Pepsi from the bottles, but when she goes to a restaurant, she'll get a Diet Coke from Fountain because, hey, that's what she prefers. But you know what? I could definitely see where they get angry at that. If they're so used to something, as you said, if it's not broken, don't fix it. The switch over from Coke products to Pepsi products, there's a huge difference. And what people don't realize is there's a huge difference. Do a blind taste test. Do a blind taste test on Coke and versus Pepsi. Do a blind taste test on ginger ales. Do a blind taste test on Mountain Dew for the original Mountain Dew versus store brands. Each store brand, Surge even. Do each individual store. Grab it from different stores, the same chain. You'd be surprised that there's a huge difference between the two or more. I've done a blind taste test with numerous types of ginger ale. I've done the ShopRite brand. I've done Polar. I've even gotten Canada Dry, which in itself had its own scandal about not having real ginger in it. Said it claimed it had ginger, but
I've heard of that.
ginger. That was a huge scandal back in the day.
I remember that.
I got Seagram's and I got Schweppes. I did a blind taste test with all 5 of them. They have a totally different taste. All 5 of them. They're all ginger ale.
Yeah, they all do taste differently, and Pepsi is known for being, going back to the colas, Pepsi is known for being sweeter than Coca-Cola, and neither one of the two are even comparable to Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper is pretty much a world of its own.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you there, Christian. I personally I'm one for sweetness, and I found Pepsi to be a little more on the bitter side.
You're the only person who's ever told me that. The majority of people who I talk to about that tell me that Pepsi is sweeter, but we all taste things differently. And going back to the issue with Taco Cabana, their regular customer base was just so used to Coca-Cola products that they were not ready to see Pepsi products. It just caught them off guard, and that's why they were so mad about it.
I agree, especially on Mountain Dew versus Surge versus whatever, because at one point, so in my early 20s, in my college years, one of my roommates challenged me to be able to tell the difference between 23 different types of caffeinated beverages in the Surge Mountain Dew competition space from about a dozen local retailers. And on a blindfold taste test, I was able to tell the difference between every single one of them. And in some cases, I could actually tell the difference between the same brand purchased in different zip codes.
That's a very interesting analysis. I never realized that if it's sold in different zip codes, I guess it's based on the bottlers, the local bottlers who handle the products. That might have an influence on it. It shouldn't, but that is a very, very interesting analysis. And that's a very interesting analysis. And I never thought that it would taste different by zip code, especially since manufacturing protocol requires them to keep everything consistent.
The reason that it can vary across zip codes is quite often, and this is still true to this day, that in most cases you are not allowed to have the sodas made across the state border because they wanted to make sure that everything was localized back then when soda companies were first starting out. And I do not think that those laws have been updated since then. So the local bottlers will be bottling the big brands, but they'll be doing so with local water, probably. And that's, if you know what the local water tastes like, you can sometimes identify what the likely location is for where it's been bottled at.
Yes, I see what you mean. I never knew about that law myself. I've always had a different idea about how sodas were manufactured, but that does make sense, and that can make a huge difference in product quality. I always tell my own clients all the time, always make sure that you stay consistent whenever humanly possible. But in this case, due to the restrictions that are placed by these local laws, it's very difficult for them to have a consistent product. Water quality does vary by different area.
Yeah, so adding on to what Justin was saying, as you all know, I'm here in New Jersey. I am looking at right now from my fridge a 1 liter of ShopRite ginger ale, one of the 24-pack individuals of Apple and Eve 100% juice, no sugar added apple juice of a 10 fluid ounce, and a Gator Light, 20 fluid ounce strawberry kiwi. Looking at the distribution company locations on all 3 of them, and only 2 of them are in New Jersey. The ShopRite Ginger Ale is distributed by Wakefern Food Court, which is out in Keysby, New Jersey. The Apple and Eve product looks like it's distributed by Apple and Eve LLC, Carneys Point, New Jersey. But the Gator Light looks like the distribution is by the Gatorade Company out in Chicago, Illinois. So I guess, and Justin, I don't know if the rules were out where you were at the time different, but it looks like certain companies maybe were able to cross state lines because all 3 of them were sold shelf stable, but all 3 of them were in the fridge.
Yeah, the laws actually do vary a little bit. The Apple and Eve being a juice would not be subjected to the laws that govern carbonated sodas. And technically, Gatorade and Gatorade and Powerade are governed as sports drinks, which are not subject to must be manufactured within your state border restrictions.
All right, but I'm looking at the Dr. Peppers that I have here, and they look like produced under the authority of the Dr. Pepper 7-Up Incorporated, Frisco, Texas.
That's
what I'm
because
like
that's where the parent company is located.
Right.
But it was bottled by a local bottler who's probably got a facility within 100 miles of where you purchased that particular Dr. Pepper.
Right,
Due
right.
to state border restrictions on that.
Well, does
Right.
every state have its own individual sub-law about that?
I think
Yeah.
so, and I think that some of those laws are actually federal in nature. I'd have to do some research.
So I wanted to elaborate a little bit more about who owns some of these brands. So Gatorade, which you mentioned is headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, is a subsidiary of PepsiCo, and Powerade is owned by its competitor Coca-Cola, which is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, despite their parent companies being in these states, every community has an independent bottler who bottles these drinks on their behalf and sells them out to retail. So, you know, the big trucks you see that say Pepsi and Dr. Pepper who pull into the grocery stores and other major retailers that carry these products, they go to these distribution centers, which are also the bottling plants. They load up and they take them to the stores. So the drinks themselves can be manufactured locally regardless of where the parent company is located. That's just my 2 cents on that. I just want to throw that little tidbit of information. But local regulations and laws can definitely have an impact in general on how you conduct business. And sadly, due to external factors beyond the manufacturer's control, it creates some inconsistency depending on where you purchase these products. As much as we want to keep things consistent and not create too much change to the customer, because wherever they travel, they expect that drink to taste exactly the same, sadly, it's unavoidable if the laws are creating that restriction on them. If they have to use their local water supply to manufacture these drinks, that is basically an uncontrollable external factor. There's only so much people can do. They can't break the law or they're going to get in trouble. But for all the business owners out there who are taking this advice and are wondering how it applies to them, remember to always keep a level of consistency among your products and services. Make sure that they're always the same across the board. Don't make abrupt changes that you don't need to make. And if you do need to change something, don't throw your entire customer base off guard. Try to let them know somehow instead of giving them this rude awakening that they weren't expecting.
Consistency, consistency, consistency. Do not make a promise if you cannot deliver it. I've said this in other podcasts. If you cannot deliver your promise, do not make it. If you promise something, deliver it. If you change something or are going to change something, please let your consumer know with ample time to make any necessary adjustments. If you are going to plan on a merge, be transparent about when this merge will be. So, unlike with what happened to Christian, as unfortunate as that is, your consumers will not be caught off guard. And additionally, if you do make this merge, give them ample notice as to when it's going to be. If they need to, say, switch providers or something, give them time. Give them time to find providers. You'd be surprised how hard it is just to find a provider. And if you're not going to follow through with your promises, you shouldn't be making a promise to begin with.
That's right. And I was actually discussing what you were just talking about, Dana, at the seminar I went to yesterday. I was with a group of business owners there, and we were talking about the exact same thing you just talked about when it came to consistency. We've talked about how it's important to stay consistent across the board. And then, of course, you never want to throw your customers off guard. Consistency is key.
If your company is going to go through with a merger, or especially if your company is going to be going out of business and you've sold your database to a rival like Longstrug's Pharmacy and Bilo Pharmacy did when they sold their operations to CVS and Walgreens respectively, please make sure that your customers have at least 90 days notice so that they have time to adjust to everything. So that they have time to notify their providers before the switch occurs.
Right. And going back to what you were saying about Rite Aid, we don't have Rite Aid in Texas, but I did read about the deal they struck with Walgreens. And I do know that a lot of Rite Aid loyalists did not want to transition to Walgreens. They said that Walgreens had bad service, at least at the locations that were near them. I was watching a YouTube video someone was documenting an abandoned Rite Aid store, and somebody mentioned in the comments that they drove several miles away to their nearest Rite Aid because the one that was closest to them ended up going to Walgreens. So they would drive an extra 10 minutes or so just to get to the nearest Rite Aid. They just refused to go to Walgreens. And of course, that doesn't mean all Walgreens are bad. I personally like to do some shopping at Walgreens, but other people are just not big on them. And another example about giving notice, and I still remember this to this day, because we've also talked about CVS too. Here in Texas, CVS turned into a powerhouse overnight back in 2004 when they acquired Eckerd. Now, I don't know if y'all remember Eckerd's, but they weren't doing... I
do.
Yes, and...
Yeah, that was huge. That was huge, Christian.
Yes, it was. Because in Texas, the stores went to CVS, but where you're at in New Jersey, they went to Rite Aid 3 years later. So when all of ours became CVS stores, New Jersey and other states up there in the Northeast, they were still operating under the Eckerd name until Rite Aid bought them.
And I remember the one in Highland Park, New Jersey. My grandmother, rest her soul, would always go to that particular Rite Aid. And I remember Eckerd's. And I remember when, for example, grocery stores, when it was Food Town, went to Edwards, went to Stop and Shop. Food Town, if I'm not mistaken, had gone to Edwards, where up here, but I think went to other companies elsewhere.
Yeah, I believe they split up. We still have Food Town here in Texas. Ours were not affected by that deal.
They were the best.
But what happened was that when CVS was poised to take over Eckerd's, what they did, they actually gave their customers notice that they were getting bought out. They had signs in the stores, and all their sales circulars all said that Eckerd's would soon be CVS. So that's a good example of giving notice to your customer that a major change is coming to a company that you've been doing business with for years. So it at least gives them some time to start evaluating whether or not they want to continue staying there. But on the business side of things, here's my advice for business owners who are getting ready to make changes. First of all, if this change is worth it, think about if your customer base is ready to take this change. And if you're merging with another company, this doesn't really apply because that's a whole different set of principles right there. But in general, when you're thinking about making a major change that you know your customers probably won't accept, think it over. Think about if it's truly necessary. If you don't need to make this change, if you know that everything that you have now in place is working well, keep it. If you want to get innovative, maybe you could add add something new without changing your current product lineup and services. Instead of discontinuing a product that you know your customers have been in love with, just add on something new. Do a test run. Marketing groups often hold focus groups to see how well products do before they even introduce them to the public, or they'll do test marketing by selling products in certain locations before they take it nationwide.
That's one thing that I give Bilo a lot of credit for, is they actually warned all of us who were their customers that they were going out of business, and that they decided that one of the ways they were going to do their best to make up the losses to their investors was by selling their pharmacy operations to a pharmacy company that they knew was not likely to go out of business anytime soon, so that their customers would not be stranded without access to their medications.
And that's the right way to do it. That's how every one of these large chains should do it. Not just pharmacy, but any type of business where you have a large customer base and you know that you could be making a change that is incredibly drastic and dramatic. Give notice. Don't be afraid to speak up.
Yes, so my mom works at a hospital in the neonatal intensive care unit, the NICU, out in a hospital in New Brunswick, New Jersey, called St. Peter's University Hospital. Another hospital, rival hospital, Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, which has since merged with Barnabas Health to create Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health Corporation, has really like not even 5 to 10 minutes away from St. Peter's. Robert Wood Johnson had acquired Somerset Medical Center, which is another hospital out in Somerville, New Jersey. They were actually a contender, and not many people knew this, but they were a possible contender for acquiring a merge with St. Peter's. St. Peter's, as far as I know, withdrew from the merge agreement, as they are an independent hospital. They have been in existence for, oh goodness, over 100 years, and are actually magnet certified, one of the top certifications for hospitals to be in. On one side of the coin, they withdrew from the merge because they felt it was not in the best interest. And as far as I know, I can't guarantee this is actually the case. My mom didn't update me since she heard that they weren't going to go through the merge anymore. But as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, they withdrew from the merge because they felt it was no longer in the best interests of their patients and their employees and everything like that. On the contrary, their pharmacy, which was an in-house pharmacy, it always was, and also a lot of staff would use that pharmacy, utilize their services to bring medications that were prescribed from the doctor's office for their families home to the families. So they'd actually have an outpatient in-house pharmacy that was a subsection of their inpatient pharmacy. That outpatient pharmacy is now acquired by Walgreens. I don't remember when this happened. All I know is that my mom, who has her insurance through her employer, St. Peter's Healthcare System, realized that, oh, I can't use that pharmacy anymore. The insurance doesn't take it anymore. So she had to look elsewhere. And that, it was quite unfortunate because it was convenient. It was very convenient. Myself, my dad, my mom, we had a prescription from our provider. They'd send it right to the St. Peter's outpatient pharmacy. My mom getting off of work one day, because she works 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. as a nurse, and she'd go right downstairs to the outpatient pharmacy, pick up the prescriptions for whatever it was, and then head home with it. She can't do that anymore. She had to go to a separate area for that. A totally different building, a totally not even affiliated with St. Peter's. And it was just quite unfortunate that that was the case.
That's terrible.
I don't know what the business side of it was, but it was sad. It was really unfortunate.
Yeah, that's horrible. And honestly, I find that even worse than what I went through with my dentist. That's terrible. That's another great example of a change, of a major change, just destroying your customer base. I'm going to close out the show by making one final statement, and that is always keep the best interest of your customer base in mind. Do not just make a change simply because you think it'll help the company. Before you even think about helping the company, make sure that your customers are being tended to first, because without your customers, there is no company. Put your customers first and make sure that any decisions that you make that are drastic are profitable decisions. You don't want to make a bad decision only to find out that your company is going to end up going bust down the road. That's my final statement right there. Keep the best interest of your customers in mind and evaluate evaluate your decisions thoroughly and make sure that they are the right ones to make before you implement them.
I'm going to close out with a question for business owners out there that's something that they should, in my opinion, ponder on before they make such changes. And this ties back to what Justin was saying before about, for example, McDonald's changing the breading on one of his favorites, the Filet-O-Fish sandwich. Here's a question for all business owners who are listening to this. Would you rather make a buck, or would you rather have your consumers be as loyal as they always were?
And that's a question that we're going to end the show with. I want all the listeners to think about that question and answer it mentally in your mind. And I want you to ask yourself that question every time you're considering making a major decision. Now, that's not just for small businesses. That's for all businesses. Even if you're the head of a large corporation, think of that. Well said, Dana. That was a great way to end the show. We want to leave our listeners thinking about that question and hope that they come up with the right answer every time they are in the decision-making process. And I thank you guys for joining me today. This was a very powerful show. Y'all have had a lot of great insight, a lot of powerful statements, a lot of really good examples, rock solid examples. Give yourselves a hand. This has got to be one of our best episodes that we've ever recorded. And I hope that all business owners will take all of our advice seriously and remember that every decision that you make will either make or break you. Think about that.